Kane.
Present.
Councilmember Brand.
Present.
Councilmember Soto.
Present.
Mayor Pro Temp Garcia. Absent. Mayor.
Present. Thank you. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press *6 to unmute.
Council, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, actually, what I'd like to propose is that on item number 2, I would like to break that down into 2 different items. There are, within item number 2, there is a resolution to ratify a contract amendment, and there's also a resolution to approve a contract extension. I'd like to separate those and make that possibly, I guess, 2 and 3, making the ratification of a contract amendment as item number 2, and possibly making the resolution to approve a contract extension to item number 3.
Okay, perfect. Do we need a motion for that, or is it Tom?
Just consensus from the council.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think we have consensus, so we'll go ahead and separate the item number 2 into 2 and 3 to discuss those 2 points separately. We're going to go ahead and move on to citizen comments. Any other citizen comments at this time? Go ahead, sir.
My name is Alan Cadiente. Can everybody hear me okay? No echo? My question would be, or my concern would be, ever since Chris Soria was the chief, he was our prior captain. And before that, we had a position of lieutenant. And if the council is worried about the current officers, meaning the tenured sergeants, there's nobody in the department that has a qualification, then maybe we should have had some people in the acting position, lieutenant or acting captain, so we don't languish for another 6 months or a year. I mean, in 6 months' time, you could figure out between the 2 sergeants, or even a year's time, who's able to cut the job. 2 of the sergeants, from what I know, have their BAs. 1 has a master. So education isn't the problem. If you're talking about experience, small department. 2 sergeants have over 5, 6, maybe even 10 years experience. I retired from the department in 2016. Extending, I think Commander or Lieutenant Hale, no big deal to extend his contract. But you as a group better figure something out in 6 months to a year. Either you're going to promote somebody or let somebody be acting, or pick somebody from the outside and quit wasting everybody's time. Thank you.
Any other citizen comments?
Hi, Tony Marquez. I actually wasn't too crazy about the Sheriff's Department coming in when Councilwoman Maria Soto had brought it to our attention. Didn't know what to expect, never had it before. But after working with the Sheriff's Department and Chief Hale at this time, it has been positive. It has been productive at our police department. I'm not sure what the problem is after working with Chief Hale, and if any of you had a chance to work with him, you would see that it is productive. And he does do a good job, and he shows up. I mean, there's nothing we haven't asked Chief Hale for that he hasn't provided, or shown up on his own time to do. So I'm not sure for the two that voted no on why, but maybe rethink that a little bit and maybe come back with a different verdict tonight. Thank you.
Well, you can stay. I'll tell you why I voted no. From the original contract to the new contract is a $21 difference for the same identical service. That's $50,000 raised throughout the, it was $250,000 compared to $275,000. If we're getting this, let me finish. If we're getting the same service, same
I'm still
employer.
on my 3 minutes though, right?
No, you can have, I'll give you extra time if we can, Mayor.
Okay.
I want to explain myself why I voted no. It's a $21 an hour raise. An hour. Do that, do the math. I'll do it for you actually right now.
That's fine.
No,
You
no,
can
no.
do the
I
math.
want you to,
Okay.
21 times.
You can do the math, all you would
It's
like.
$840 a week difference, a week. Times that by 52 weeks out of the year, $43,000 difference. I'm thinking about the budget. That's why I
Renegotiate.
voted no.
That's why we're here, right? To
Yeah, I want to
renegotiate
explain
the
to you why I voted no, so we could be on the same page. The second option was that we will get a captain with captain experience. And that captain would be, obviously, I'm pretty sure Chuck Hale. From today to tomorrow, if he changes as a captain, his experience don't change. He still has experience as a lieutenant. Just because you change the title doesn't mean the experience comes with the title. That comes with the actual experience.
And you've seen his resume.
No, I'm going off what our city manager said. We can't have two lieutenants. If you watch the yesterday meetings, she didn't want one lieutenant teaching another lieutenant how to do the job. So she wants to get a captain. But as of right now, we're getting the same captain that just was a lieutenant today. So that's the reason.
Okay, and then where does that leave the city?
I'm fine.
have-
I'm okay with signing the sheriff's contract, but the money got to be right.
So that's why we negotiate.
I wish I was involved in the negotiation.
We still need a chief of police, and thank goodness we did have somebody, and hopefully he's still willing to stay. Thank you.
Any other citizen comments?
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Hilda Lopez. So, based on what I saw last night at last night's meeting, it seems as though the option that was approved for the city to move forward with the plan of action is actually a really good option, and I commend Vanessa and the Sheriff's Department for coming together to figure out a plan that is going to get us to a place where, from my interpretation, and please, Vanessa, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to provide the foundation so that we can grow lower level, for a lack of knowledge or, officers, into the position of eventually growing them into a police chief. As it stands, please correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have that pathway of professional development. It would be amazing to be able to put that into action, put that in play for a reasonable, less than $22 an hour, more than what we're paying now. It creates, in my opinion, longevity for individuals that are currently working within the department, and also career development, as I previously mentioned. So as I said, I commend Vanessa for being intuitive into the needs of the city and moving, making this the recommendation of the city staff. As for the council members who voted no, Maria, Councilmember King, I'm curious as to if this is not a viable option for the city, in your opinions. What is your vision? What is your opinion on how we should move forward? If this is not, in your opinions, a good option, I'm just curious as to what you would like to see happen within the department, and overall the status of the city.
It's exactly how you stated. Second in command. We do have officers over in the department that meet that criteria. If our interim chief were not here, there should be somebody in that place. But according to Vanessa yesterday, that was unknown. A succession plan was in place, and that has been the plan, even with our previous city manager. And as we look at it, we do have sergeants over there. Alan had stated that we do have people, officers over in the department with the education and the experience. They've been put in those places when they were needed during certain transitional phases of the city. So yes, I'm a proponent of wanting to recruit within.
But wouldn't this plan provide that, unless I'm missing something, wouldn't this plan, by creating a position for lieutenant that is employed by the city, provide that for career development from within? And that's kind of where I'm not understanding.
We don't have to spend the $275,000 to make that decision. I mean, we have employees that are qualified. I'll give you an example for our public works.
Qualified as
To become
chief of police?
That's the city standards. So a perfect example, within the last year and a half, we got 3 staff members that used to work for the public works. According to the city staff, they were not qualified to be public works directors. They left this city, and we got 3 of them in different cities as public directors. So or maybe our standards are way too high where we can't fulfill the positions.
Well, I don't think that's a totally different
Yeah, so
conversation.
we have,
but I'm just curious as to what your vision for
I think we have
career
employees that-
development
I think
and
we have
getting
a-
a chief in place would be without the assistance of the sheriff's department. As Vanessa stated last night, and I know from personal experience that this is a volatile job market. It's very hard to fill positions for recruitments. I just don't see that we are going to be able to get to a place where the city has the chief of police without the assistance of the sheriff's department. And, with all due respect, the lack of consistency from the council over the last year and a half does not make the city of Livingston an employer of choice. I am just asking that you guys please consider moving forward with a plan that is beneficial for the city and that is going to put us in a better position than we are now and that when we will be in the next 6 months. Thank you.
Mayor, if
Yes.
I may just share a quick comment that we did have, in fact, back in 2019, a clear second in command, like Councilmember Soto stated. However, due to our budget issues, that position was unfunded. It was frozen, and it's been frozen for 2 years. So we don't have that position at the moment. So we don't have a second in command.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Okay, we bring it over to council now and move to our discussion and potential action items. So we have the first one, motion to repeal contract extension with Merced County Sheriff's Office for Interim Police Chief Services. So attorneys, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, last night, we took a vote that it was an illegal vote. We need to repeal it. I'm just going to just start by saying that. Councilmember Garcia thought he did not have a conflict. Unfortunately, he was reading backwards what he was quoting, so he did have a conflict, and that would make the contract void and illegal with potentially other repercussions. So that's why we scheduled the meeting tonight, so you can repeal the action that you took last night and then reconsider the item again.
Thank you. Want to add anything else?
Yeah, so just to be really clear, last night it happened, I think there was like 3 minutes and there was a little bit of delay. And so I think collectively, our job is to kind of stop sometimes and take a moment and make sure what we're doing. I think everything, I want to make very clear that, and I've talked to the Mayor Pro Tem, I think everything was done with the best of intentions. It was just a slight misunderstanding. Based off of his misunderstanding, it became necessary very quickly to call this special meeting to repeal the action that was taken with his participation, and then to have the item reconsidered without his participation. So I want to be very clear, it came from a good spot, and it had the city's best interest in mind. it was unintentional. It was just a misreading of a specific FPPC regulation. And because of that, we're going to, the first action tonight is the job, and the goal is to remedy that to the extent that we can.
And to that end, we do need the members who voted for it to make the motion to repeal.
Council, any questions, comments?
Before we go there, if you can expand a little bit exactly and point to what specifics, like items, if you're referring to the 1090, so that we can have a better understanding and explain what that is. You might, as from probably coming from years of experience in legal issues, to you guys is just pretty normal, but your language is not general language for the public. So, I want to also give you an opportunity to educate me a little bit more, and just if you can expand on that.
Okay, so to be very clear, as you guys know, I used to work for the Fair Political Practices Commission and the legal division, and so some of the legal opinions that were drafted there have my signature on them. And in the former iteration of our firm, Steve Churchwell was the first named partner, and he was the former general counsel for about a decade, appointed by the governor to serve at the Fair Political Practices Commission. So there are two entities that oversee what I'm going to call some of these, city council, and it applies to other jurisdictions, conflict of interest / kind of ethics rules and guidelines. The first one has to do with just straight conflicts of interest, what you can participate in, what you can't participate in. Most of those are based off of decisions that are made in proximity to things like ownership interests that you have or direct economic interests that you have. When it comes to 1090, it's a little bit more specific, and it relates to figure out how to word this. It relates to having a direct interest in the contract. So, as you know, I think it's known, the Mayor Pro Tem is an employee of the Sheriff's Department, and by virtue of that. The vote we were taking on last night was whether or not to extend a contract which has a financial benefit to his employer, which is the Merced County Sheriff's Department. The Mayor Pro Tem recused himself in the first vote. He recused himself last night before the meeting. And what he did is he had a misreading of a regulation called 1705, which is legally required participation. And I'll read the relevant portion so that we're all on the same page, because I think this is important. This is part of what you and I have discussed about actually making sure that people, we don't just tell people things, but we actually read and make sure that they understand, which is what I think you're getting at tonight. So that provision reads, this regulation shall be construed narrowly and shall, and then number one, not be construed to permit an official who is otherwise disqualified under section 87-100 to vote to break a tie. The reason that as I understand it, the reason the Mayor Pro Tem was confused is it went under legally required participation. And there are certain circumstances under which somebody who has a conflict of interest is allowed to participate. So as an example, when that would be the only way in which there would be a quorum of the government body. In other words, there's 5 of you on the city council. If there were only 2 members that were present that didn't have a conflict, and the only other member that was present was somebody who did, then out of necessity for the government entity to perform its basic government functions, that member, while disclosing the conflict of interest, would be under the law eligible to participate. But by contrast, as we read in that regulation, that does another situation that might come up is when what was the other situation we talked about, newbie on the way down? I'm trying to remember.
Lack of a quorum.
Oh, and that was the lack of the quorum. When was the other one? Anyways, there's another situation under which a council member would participate despite that. Oh, it would be so for instance, it happens a lot in assessment districts and LLMDs. So for instance, let's say half the council lives in a particular assessment district. So that's an area where you get assessed for lighting, landscaping, maintenance. And it's not so large that it affects the community generally, but we have 3 members of the council that it affects. 2 members can participate. What happens is the remaining council members who are present would draw straws, and depending on how you structure it, whoever draws the long straw, the short straw, that's the member who participates, and the conflict is waived for purposes of their participation. Again, so that the government entity can conduct business and be able to make a decision. Otherwise, in small communities like Livingston, you'd often run into situations where no vote could ever happen. So my understanding is there was some confusion on the Mayor Pro Tem's part between when somebody is legally required to participate, and then a misread of the section C1 that I said, which, just again to be very clear, this regulation gets construed narrowly, so it's tight. We're not going to be liberal with it. We're not going to take an expansive view of it, and shall not be construed to permit an individual to vote to break a tie. So he just read it the opposite. That created both a null and void contract, but what it also had the effect of doing is because the deputy Mayor Pro Tem would be deemed to have a financial interest in the contract of his employer, it potentially affected the other council members, potentially aiding and abetting him in voting on something in which he had a financial interest. And the consequences for those kinds of violations are not that great. And so I think we all kind of learned by moving fast, sometimes it's good to slow down. But this mistake was merely made by virtue of a misreading with no ill intent in trying to do what was in the best interest of the cities. And so before that contract could ever take any force or effect, before the extension would have any force and effect, we basically took the action to agendize, have an 8 p.m. meeting, because that was the quickest that we could do it once we realized the error, and meet the 24-hour special meeting standards under the law. So we did that so that we could repeal that vote and then have a reconsideration without his participation and influence on the ultimate outcome. Did I sufficiently describe it? I don't know if I want to go into.
I do believe that you have, in my own research and looking at the same item and reading exactly the same thing, it looks like it's a very gray area that it's open to different interpretations. Obviously, from my perspective, now being in the legal world for 28 or 30 years like you guys have, some of this stuff can, and even today, so, and that is why even last night when you and I had the conversation, I did have a suggestion, a wish to have, and for my own sake, for my own peace of mind, to be able to better understand and help me make decisions, to have an additional legal
Opinion.
A second opinion. A second opinion. Not necessarily, and you and I talked about this.
Yeah.
Not saying that, I don't trust you guys, but it's just having a second opinion on something this concerning would only help me and everyone involved and being more certain and to what, and then figure out what we need to do.
Yeah, so correct. So to be very clear, so that people have context, right? This was a personal conversation between only you and me, and that personal conversation has not been shared with anybody else.
Okay.
So just so that people aren't thinking that there's things. I want to be very, very clear. I understand that for folks who don't practice law, that could seem gray. For attorneys, this is what we talked about. It's not so gray. We kind of know the rules in which we work with, but I have absolutely no problem with you getting a second opinion and kind of validating what we said. I will say, at least action on the first item, I feel, given the implications, is necessary tonight, and there are larger implications, as we talked about, because right now we have a contract that's set to otherwise expire in the coming days. So I don't think it would be. I absolutely support. I've given you guys names in the past of I think maybe 7 to 10 different lawyers that do that kind of work that you could get that second opinion from, and I think it should be a council decision. I don't think it should be influenced by the city manager, by the city attorney. I think it should be a council decision. But I absolutely support the idea if you guys want to get a second opinion. But my recommendation is that we do take action on the first one tonight because of the implications of not.
Yeah, I just wanted it to kind of provide all of that information in regards to the conversation. Thank you.
Doug, just for clarification, I know you spoke about the actual conflict between the Mayor Pro Tem and participating in this item. Can you elaborate a little bit more? I mean, obviously based on your experience and representing different cities, but is there like actual, not case law, but actual situations in other cities where it pertains to this particular situation we're facing now?
Yes. So, Nubi, you want to take over? Nubi did some research today. I mean, there was a legal opinion that was right on point dealing with the deputy sheriff and entering into a contract with that deputy sheriff's department. So I'll let Nubia kind of go over that.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Nubia Goldstein, Deputy City Attorney. As Doug mentioned, this actually is a relatively common issue because normally you have individuals who are employees of public agencies, also involved in public service, serve on city councils for other jurisdictions. So it actually was really fortuitous that in 2000, the Attorney General's office did issue an opinion regarding this particular issue. And in that case, the question, which is very similar to the circumstances that the council is facing now, is whether a city council, one member of which is a deputy sheriff, can it enter into a contract with the sheriff to provide police services to the city. And so based off of an evaluation of the language in Government Code 1090, there is the evaluation of what is deemed a remote interest. And what a remote interest basically means is you have an employee who has a financial interest simply because they're an employee and they're receiving a salary. They don't necessarily hold a position of a higher executive position, but they're receiving a salary from an agency that is looking to contract with a city. So in that instance, the Attorney General's opinion was that it is legally allowable for the council to consider and approve that contract, but only under very specific circumstances. And that specific circumstance was that the council member who had the financial interest was required to disclose the financial interest as part of the meeting, recuse themselves and not participate, and that allowed for the rest of the council to move forward with considering the contract. So again, from the perspective of an opinion that was issued more than 20 years ago, the Attorney General's office has been very consistent with that advice, and so because of that, it is allowable, but again, under very specific circumstances. Once you have that member who has the financial conflict step outside the scope of that exception and participate in voting on something that they have a financial interest in, that's when you start running afoul of the requirements under the law. And as Doug mentioned, there's a whole host of unfortunate, or lack of a better term, very, very strict consequences.
And if we could, because I want to keep consistent with the promise that I made to Councilmember Moran from the day that I did this RFP pitch, can you go over and just name the parties that were involved in the county that was involved as well, if there's a citation so people can look it up?
The opinion itself, the opinion is 00-706 from the Attorney General's office. And in this particular instance, it was, I don't know if they actually disclosed it. It was at the request, actually, of Dennis Cardoza, a member of the State Assembly, to evaluate it as part of, I believe, probably a constituent in his district. But that's really the scope of the information provided in the Attorney General's opinion. But I'm more than happy to circulate this to the council and make it available to the public.
Yeah, so my old boss, so. Did that sufficiently answer your question, Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Council, any other questions, comments at this time? All right, we're going to take it out for public comment at this time. Any comments regarding this, the first item?